chorus is growing among business and investors to reopen the economy at an accelerated rate as they fear the economic hardship inflicted by lockdown on South Africans will cost more lives than it can save. For more, I'm joined by Andrew Lapping, the Chief Investment Officer, Allan, and Ryan Ravens, the CEO of Accelerate Cape Town. Now, it seems to me that the government's stuck in between a rock and a hard place at the moment. On the one hand, they're being castigated by a lot of people in business saying that no, it's too early, lives are at stake. On the other hand, people are saying that, well, let's go, let's open it up, we might as well do it now. To start off with, Andrew Lapping, what's your view on that?
So for us, it's all about the cost benefit, and the sad thing is, even despite the lockdown, it's not possible to stop the spread of the virus. And you can see that from the data. Even during the hard lockdown 5, the virus was still growing in South Africa, and that will continue to happen until it peaks in a few months. So the way I see it is the government has a choice. They can either, very sadly, let people go to die from COVID, and you can have that happen, or you can have the same number of people die from COVID under lockdown, but also destroy the economy. And so we urging the government to look at the picture and act the big picture and see just how many lives are lost through poverty and hardship, and how many additional lives will be lost through poverty and hardship, which is caused by the lockdown, and put that into the context of the lives being lost by COVID, which are all tragic.
And Ryan Ravens, the CEO of Accelerate Cape Town, you've written a very strong article today calling for the economy to be opened forthwith. What do you fear is going to happen if the government shilly-shallys a bit on this one?
Thanks, Chris. Yeah, I mean, I think, as Andrew has mentioned, the lockdown is not going to eradicate the virus. There's no country that can maintain a lockdown for 18 months until we manage to get a vaccine. And so we already know that countries are going to have to open up their economies whilst this virus is still at play. Unfortunately, in South Africa, we don't have a history of good implementation from a government perspective, and certainly not speedy implementation. And I think increasingly the concern is that an extended lockdown and sort of, dilly-dallying, as you said, on plans and implementation and clear guidance in terms of how we release the lockdown is costing us on a daily basis. We've seen a number of South Africa's best-known companies going into business rescue. And the reality is that carnage is going to continue unless we very urgently find a way to get people back to work. And it's not to say that this is not a bad virus, but I don't think there is any winning situation. It's lose-lose either way we go, but I think we really need to start taking a very clear look at the numbers and the actual impacts today versus worst case scenarios and projections.
If I go back to you, Andrew, and I could play devil's advocate for a minute. I mean, we've all been reading the international wires as well as the domestic news in this last couple of months. And a lot of people around the world have been praising President Cyril Ramaphosa for his actions to stop COVID-19, saying he's made better decisions than other countries in the Northern Hemisphere. Isn't there a temptation to sit back and say, well, okay, he's made the right decision so far. It's not easy, but let's see him see this one through.
For sure, it's not easy. And the reason behind the initial lockdown was to prepare our hospitals, which took a couple of weeks, and they've done what they can to make preparations. But there's subsequently been no reason given for carrying on the lockdown. The government hasn't said exactly what they're trying to achieve. Our hospitals are not overwhelmed, as I'm sure Peter from Fair Statements for Life will tell you. So no one knows what the reasoning is behind the government's thinking. And thinking is changing. This is a new virus. There's new data coming out all the time. And it's essential for government to look at that data, look what's happening, and make decisions that are up to the minute, and not just, if you've gone down one path, you must be willing to change if the facts change.
Just give me an idea, the cost to Allan Gray. I mean, you're a company that's always long-term, always looking to pile up wealth for the future, but it must have cost you a fortune.
So we're very fortunate in that, we're a big corporate business, a financial services company. So yes, we've seen a reduction in people who make debit orders and things like that because people have lost their income. So 15% of debit orders from businesses cancelled because people don't have the income to contribute to their retirement annuities. But actually the impact on us is minor compared to that on small and medium enterprises. I'll give you two examples. Firstly, as Ryan mentioned, someone like Comair going bankrupt. So that's all Comair's staff, but more importantly, it's all Comair's suppliers who lost their income. Another good measure of the impact on small business is Yoko, which is a credit card provider to small business in South Africa. They showed trade through their customers down 85 to 90%. So that's restaurants, small shops, that kind of thing. Those are the people, as well as the people in the informal economy, who are feeling the real brunt of what's going on.
In terms of this opening up, if we go back to you, Ryan, I don't know how it is in Cape Town right now, but I've been working all the way through this lockdown, and in the first weeks, you could have heard a pin drop. Wherever you went in this town, it was quiet, everyone was alone. But I've just noticed the last few weeks, even before the decision was made, that slowly, more and more people are out and about, more and more things are working. Don't you think that is more likely what's going to happen than the government just say it's okay, you can carry on now?
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's going to become increasingly difficult for government to maintain this lockdown as the citizenry loses confidence in government's ability to make decisions. The National Command Council has been particularly obscure and not very transparent in its decision making, and I think that certainly doesn't help government's case at all, and is going to lead to social disobedience and civil disobedience, which is going to require state violence in order to ensure the lockdown continues. And this is the sad reality of it. In many poorer neighborhoods and disadvantaged communities, we already know social distancing is simply not possible. You've now also had a decision that people have a very tiny 3-hour window in which to exercise. And down here in Cape Town, that's effectively a 2-hour window because from 6 to 7 it's still dark. And so it's actually causing people to come together and crowd certain areas more than actually having the opposite effect. And with that sort of scenario, you then have to question why we're continuing to destroy the economy when we know that social distancing is already not happening, and we know that community transmission is going to happen anyway, whether we have this lockdown or not. And so I guess this is a big part of why business is calling for an urgent review and an accelerated release to this lockdown.
Actually, just one quick supplementary question I wanted to ask you, Ryan. I mean, I've listened to these World Health Organization's briefings for the last few months, and that's one thing that's always raised. They say in Africa, we have markets, we have people, many people are living in dwellings, we have people moving around on transport. This social distancing is almost impossible, but every time they said, well, it's something we must think about, it's something we must talk about, but I don't know, what can be actually done about it?
Yeah, and that's, the scary reality is if you look at some of the numbers and things coming out of the World Health Organization, I have to say that personally for me, that organization's credibility is really starting to wane. Yes, we've heard the worst case scenarios about Africa and the manner in which the virus could spread here. But the reality is there are many things that kill people in Africa, not least of which are things like tuberculosis. And this is why, I'm questioning the World Health Organization sort of crying wolf the way they have. We've had 270,000, I think at last count, 274,000 total deaths globally. Tuberculosis kills 1 million more people. So 1.2 million people die every year from a completely curable disease in tuberculosis, but there was no call from the World Health Organization to sort of shut down world economies and bring everything to a halt. And so if the intention really is to save as many lives as possible, and particularly in Africa, then one could argue that a focused approach to eradicating tuberculosis would save far more lives than even a worst case projection of what COVID might do on the African continent. And I just think these numbers really need to start being put into perspective. Even if you look at that 270,000, it's now emerging that as much as 97% of those people had a severe comorbidity. So they may have died anyway within the next year because they were seriously ill people. And so increasingly the fatality and the fatality rate of this disease is coming down, and it's seeming not nearly as dangerous as what the World Health Organization may have expected it to be initially. And it could be for any reason. And bear in mind, I'm certainly no COVID-19 expert. There are no COVID-19 experts on the planet. Let's be honest, because this disease has only been around for a very short period. But it does seem as if the death rate in Africa has been substantially lower, certainly in South Africa, substantially lower than anywhere else in the world. And we don't know why that is. It could be that Africa has already developed some level of herd immunity. It could be because of the immunization schedules that we have as mandatory, or it could be because of our climate. We certainly don't know, but the numbers are certainly telling us that this disease is not nearly as dangerous as some of the other diseases killing Africans every day.
Sure. If I can go back to you, Andrew Lapping at Allan Gray, looking to the future now, I mean, there's been all kinds of predictions. The Economist was saying it's going to take 10 years for the economy to come around. And bearing in mind, South Africa's economy wasn't exactly in great shape as we went through junk status and all the issues of last year. What's your feeling about the future?
There's no doubt that even if the government said, listen here, from tomorrow, there's going to be no more lockdown, you must just do sensible things like washing your hands, wearing a face mask that have no cost, certain sectors will take a long time to recover. People are still very fearful. The kind of media and government has put a great deal of fear into people's minds. They're not going to be rushing out to restaurants, so that hospitality industry will take a long time. Similarly, if your business relies on inbound international tourism, your business can take a long time to recover. But other industries will recover quite quickly. The other thing, when someone's gone bust, they can't just start their business again. The capital base has been destroyed. And something that kind of worries me somewhat about governments is they think the economy is this thing with all these discrete buckets. You can just turn parts on and turn parts off. It's not. It has to operate into the system. And that's why it must be allowed to operate, let free markets do their thing and people innovate and grow. But I don't want to give economic forecasts. They're impossible. But I think they're even harder than virus forecasts. But the economy is going to take a long time to recover, especially SAs. And we're going to have this great debt burden, or even larger debt burden, weighing on us for a long time to come.
And just one last very quick question, Andrew, before I let you go, is that one of the supreme ironies of this whole situation for me is the fact that the Northern Hemisphere, which for many years has been telling the Southern Hemisphere not to use taxpayers' money to prop up industry and prop up finances, it seems in the North that the countries up there are swimming in it. I mean, it's just amazing how airlines are flying on taxpayers' money. It seems that it's changed everything.
If we're just talking investments now, that's where you get the great debate. What's going to happen? Is this huge money printing going to lead to inflation? Like Milton Friedman would say, inflation is money, and the huge money creation will lead to inflation. And that's why people are worried. They realize if something can be created without bounds, it has no value. Hence, the gold price going up. The other equally smart people that argue that the huge amounts of debt being taken on will lead to a kind of debt deflation spiral, similar to what's been going on in Japan for the last 20 years. So, if you're an investor, it's extremely interesting from that point of view of what strategy you choose. But net, either way, it's not good.
Thank you very much indeed. That was Andrew Lapping, Chief Investment Officer Allan Gray, and Ryan Ravens, the CEO of Accelerate Cape Town.